Hi, welcome, and my name is Becky Meagher, and welcome to Transitions, Body, Mind, Spirit. Transitions, we go through so many transitions in our life. You know, when you were a kid and you thought you were going to be a fireman or a nurse, and then you go to a transition and something happens and things turn out totally differently. Well, I like to use the metaphor of triathlons, something that I do. And in a triathlon, normally the first thing you do is swim. And then you get in the transition area. And then you get on that bicycle. And you transition again, and then you put your shoes on and you run. And so it's a great metaphor, all the different things we do in our lives and how we kind of stumble in this and stumble in that, and voila, we have a whole new life. So speaking of whole new lives, I'd like to introduce Ted Lomica, who is an amazing person. He is an executive in the healthcare business, but his other world is the world of ultra racing. And ultra racing is, well, he first started out with triathlons, and well, I'm just going to let Ted begin. And Ted, welcome. So glad you're here.
Thank you very much, Becky. It's a delight to be here, and it'll be fun to share some of my experiences with your audience.
Yes. So for one thing, as a kid, you weren't in the weren't doing athletics or on the track team or any of that. Is that right?
That's correct, yes. I mean, my experience going through grade school was I played a little bit of soccer, but so did everybody else. So not a whole lot of athletic background.
Okay. And then you were raised in?
Louisville, Kentucky.
Louisville. And then you went to college?
Yes, Tulane in New Orleans.
Okay.
And I've lived various places throughout the southeastern United States. Of every place I've lived, Nashville is my favorite.
Okay, so settled in Nashville here. So I believe you said you were doing skiing and you were scuba diving. And tell us how this world opened up to you.
Yeah, it really did. It really did. So, you know, shortly after 1998, at this point in my life, I'd had 5 years of relevant business experience, had an MBA under my belt. I was kind of going through kind of a bucket list of things that were fun and exciting, trying some new things, scuba diving, hang gliding, did a marathon, and I was wondering, what's next? What comes next? And I was on a boat in the middle of the Red Sea because I had two hobbies at the time. I had snow skiing, which occupied my time for 1 week and 1 weekend. And I had scuba diving, which occupied my time for 1 week and 1 weekend. And I'm realizing I have 50 available weekends ripe for adventure.
Aha. And somebody was telling you about triathlons. And for our listening audience, what is a triathlon?
Sure. So as I'm on the boat during middle of dive 1 and dive 2, I had a chance to speak to a woman who was part of the dive group, and she was an ophthalmologist. She was very excited about her new sport of triathlon and how much she really enjoyed it. And I was so enamored with her description of it that I decided I'm going to give that a try. And I decided, at this point in my life, I have run, my longest run is only 5 miles. Wow. And I learned how to swim as a kid, but haven't been swimming since I took a college course as just a PE credit. So swimming is something I haven't done in many, many years. And cycling is something I enjoy, and I've heard that it would be great to keep my legs in shape from a skiing perspective. So I'll give it a go. And I signed up for a triathlon. Festival of Flowers in South Carolina was my first ever triathlon, kind of the Olympic distance where the run is 6.2 miles. So it was the longest run I'd done in my life, at that time. I was woefully underprepared. Somehow I thought my scuba dive wetsuit would be a good speed wetsuit. It was not. It held massive amounts of water. And what I liked about the bike, wasn't even my bike, it was my girlfriend's bike at the time, subsequently my wife. It was a mountain bike and not a road bike. But what I liked about that experience was the encouragement that everybody gave me. People were shouting my name and saying, or shouting to me and saying, keep going, you're looking great. And I knew I was dead last. But it was just an amazing experience to get out there, and that unbelievable encouragement from the other athletes said to me that this sport is really something special.
Yes, and so that was an Olympic distance. Tell people what does that mean?
It was, and that was an Olympic distance.
And that
so you
means how
start
much
with
in the swim?
In the swim, it's a little less than a mile. It's about 9/10 of a mile. The
Okay.
bike ride is about 25 miles, and the run is 6.2 miles. And it took everything I had to finish it that day.
That's a lot to begin with.
It is. It is.
Yes, okay, an Olympic distance. But it hooked you.
It did. Yeah, I was hooked right away, and I loved it. And I found out we have a Music City Triathlon event in our local vicinity. This is 2001, and I said, that's what I'm going to do. And for many years, I did that. Subsequently added Memphis in May. Memphis in May was a really cool event in that era because it was unbelievably, it was a qualifier for the Ironman World Championship. And we had a lot of pros that would come and they would get their race credit and qualifying at that event. Natasha Badman was one of the most, one of my favorite pros at the time. She had a prolific streak of Ironman overall finishes in the women's division, and it was fun to talk to her about some of those experiences, and she was very encouraging. So I came home and I told my wife, I got a chance to speak to Natasha Badman. She didn't know who that was.
Right.
And I told her, she said, maybe I would do good to have my own cheetah. And she didn't know what that was, but that was her special carbon fiber bicycle.
Oh.
That wasn't the right bike for me. I didn't buy it, but it was just a series of fun conversations, and it was neat to get pro tips like that.
Yes.
Somebody taking that time to spend a moment with a novice like me was really cool.
Wow, wow. So you became hooked on this, and then bit by bit, you started doing more and more, right?
I did. And so I joined the Nashville Triathlon Club, of which you're a part,
Yes.
and I really enjoyed it. A lot of great camaraderie and training partners, and I was impressed with the people that had stepped up to the challenge and completed an iron distance triathlon. And so I watched a number of people do that, and I had that question, what if? And what is truly possible? And could I do something like that?
The Ironman distance.
The Ironman distance, sure.
What is the Ironman?
They're really long and really arduous. And so you start the day in an Ironman triathlon with a swim of 2.4 miles. And if that's not long enough, you continue your day with a bike ride of 112 miles. And then you finish your day with a full marathon, 26.2 miles. And so cumulative total, swim, bike, run, 140.6 miles.
Yes.
And so I decided to pull the trigger and make the plunge, and so made that determination a year before the race in 2005 to do my first ever iron distance event in 2006, which was Ironman Florida. Fortunately for me, with the Nashville Triathlon Club, I had more than 25 people to train with. Most of my training I concentrated into the weekends, and most of that features around a large bike ride. And so that was incredibly helpful to me, to have that support group, to have the training and the knowledge and the friends and the camaraderie to pull that through.
And you train mostly on the weekends, right?
Mostly on the weekends. Mostly on the weekends. My training volume is unusually low, but that works for me. It's almost kind of a quasi-race experience to go really big over a concentrated effort of Saturday and Sunday. And so race event is either Saturday or Sunday going really big. So it does work. I'm certainly not the fastest. Sometimes I'm amongst the slowest, but I get it done and I have a lot of fun.
Right, and you finish it with the Ironman, you have a certain amount of hours you have to finish it by, or that's it.
17 hours, start at 7 a.m. and finish before midnight.
And
a Cinderella story.
The first one you ever did, it was?
Yeah, first one I ever did was in Florida, and it got very dark at night and kept going. It was just part of the event. Beautiful area in Panama City Beach, Florida.
And how long did it take? How many hours?
Oh, that's a great question. So my first one ever was 12 hours and 18 minutes.
Well within the time frame.
Well within the time frame.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. So obviously, and then you have a job.
I do.
So, and 2 kids and a wife.
That's right.
So they say that it takes at least 9 months to train for an Ironman. It takes a lot of work to get up to that level.
It really does. So in 2005, 2006, and 2007, these were eras where the events were so popular and there were so few of them that they sold out incredibly quick. And you were literally signing up a year in advance, which did kind of lock in a whole year of training because you've got something that you're training for. So that actually worked quite well. I had intended to be one and done with Florida. Bought a bike with Florida gearing, flat-based gearing, and everything was focused on Florida. And the very next Ironman that I looked at was in Louisville, Kentucky, where I grew up. I can't not do that one. I mean, I know I'll get to shake the hands with the mayor at the time, Jerry Abramson. So, I mean, I know people there. It's just going to be a blast. It's going to be a lot of fun to go to my hometown and actually race an iron distance triathlon. It was an inaugural race, so there's a lot of excitement around
the first time they'd done it.
The first time they had done it.
Nice.
So I had to be a part of it, and I was.
And did you have to get another bike?
No. I decided I'm just going to take that bike for that one race and use it for substantially everything.
Okay. Wow. So there you are, number 2.
Yes.
And then things started rolling along here, right?
I really liked the iron distance. I really liked it. I found that I can do it. It's challenging. I said, if I can do this, then I should do this. And it became a personal goal. And I said, my annual test of fitness will be an iron distance triathlon. And so I've always thought of triathlons, I'm testing myself and I'm saying, what are my capabilities? What can my body do? And so I'm answering that question. And the irony of my first ever is I was looking at how much people were putting into training and time to devote to it. And I recognized I didn't have that type of time. And so I remember kind of leaning into kind of an economics idea as diminishing marginal returns. And if they're feeling a sense of fatigue, maybe a little bit on the overtraining side, I'll match their performance, but I'll do it in a different way. I'll be undertrained. I'll come in on the underside of that curve, and perhaps I can get the average distance. And so of the 24, 25 people that went to Ironman Florida in 2006 and raced with me, I was that arithmetic median. I achieved my goal of mediocrity.
Wow, so you were the medium of the 25 people.
And I was also median in my age group, which was an unexpected surprise.
Okay, all right.
109 people behind me and 109 people ahead of me. So I was the arithmetic median in my age group.
Amazing. Wow. So do you, because like you're in finance and your job, do you map out, okay, I'm going to train this amount this weekend, this amount next weekend? Do you have it all mapped out, or is
it's not regimented. It's not regimented at all. I have an idea of what I would like to do. I know I would like to do some substantive swimming, maybe at least an hour or two of swimming sometime during the week, ideally on Friday. Friday is one of my favorite days to swim. I know I'm going to get on a bike ride. I'll get together with some friends, and we're going to go out and ride. We're going to ride on Natchez Trace Parkway. It just has naturally rolling hills and some, challenging terrain. So that's a wonderful place. And then I usually run Bellmead Boulevard, Percy Warner Park. These are and I just go with whatever I feel like running. So my plans are not dialed in. That's more art than science. And I know as long as I keep my body ready and have an ability to do some big things, to me that's enough. And my goals are really quite modest. I'm looking for a finish and just getting out there and having some fun, still maintaining that work-life balance.
Yes. So give me the typical, all right, on the weekend, here you are, you're going to bike, and you're going to bike 25 miles, 50 miles, 75.
Yeah, usually my bike rides, I like to go, some weekends I'll go, and maybe it just feels like a 32 feels like enough. More often than not, it's usually 50, sometimes 75, with the occasional 110. Sometimes I'll plan with the guys, and they're really good. If I tell them I'm interested in doing a night ride, and we might start on Friday evening, and we just might ride all the way down to the Tennessee River and back. And so round trip, that's about 210 miles.
Whoa,
it's a long ride. We don't do that more than a few times a year, but it's a lot of fun.
Wow. Is there any time for sleep?
Oh, sure. Sometimes we'll pick a park bench, but it almost makes you more tired with a 1 to 2 minute cat nap almost makes you a little bit more tired. So, but we do that if needed.
Wow, fun. All right. Well, then we're getting into some even more. I mean, yes, you had do all these Ironmen in different places, and the culmination was Hawaii, Kona. That's what
was.
like the place.
Sure was.
It's difficult to get in. How
It's
did you get in?
incredibly hard to get in. There's either you can win a lottery to get in, you can make a very substantial donation to the tune of $50,000 to $75,000 to get in.
I didn't know
or
that.
you can get in through qualification, which requires some physical ability and training. I don't have, nor do I do. And so the only other way in is through the Legacy program, which they do have. Think of it as a frequent flyer program with an airline. You have to do so many flights and you get in free. So here you still have to pay for it, but they will let you into the big show. And the requirement is you have to do 12 iron distance triathlons. And so when I arrived, I had 20 under my belt, and this was going to be my 21st iron distance triathlon at the Ironman World Championship on the Big Island of Hawaii.
A biggie.
Very exciting.
Yes.
And it was
you took your family?
I did. I took my family.
Yes.
And they absolutely loved the experience. And so my wife, she volunteered to be an athlete catcher at the end, because a lot of the athletes at this race in particular, they go all out, and a lot of times they have literally no energy left at the end, and they literally have to be caught. So she was an athlete catcher. And she, interestingly enough, tying this back to Natasha Badman, she missed by one athlete catcher the opportunity to catch Natasha when she finished on that day.
Wow. Wow. So did she catch you?
She was there when I finished. She had to add 2 hours to her shift, but she was there when I finished that most epic triathlon. So it was a culmination of 5 years of hard work, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, just a lot of joy, a culmination of many years working diligently and disciplinedly to achieve a goal that was meaningfully important to me.
Yes, that's fantastic. And you fell in love with Hawaii, too.
Oh, I love Hawaii. Yeah, the island is alive. And it's just, anybody who doubts that, you just take a helicopter tour around the island. We were there. And we could see the lava forming on the southeastern side of the island. And when real time is geologic time, and they're one and the same, and you realize how much life and vitality is there in that island, it is really amazing. Went back a couple years later and took another trip with my kids in the helicopter, and we were looking at a crater. And my kids said to me, "Dad, how many eons has that crater been there?" And I looked at my daughters and I said, 2 years. Because we had a volcanic eruption and had blown out a side of the crater on the Big Island. So Hawaii is full of surprises.
Wow. All right. So tell us more, because you've done the epitome, the Ironman and all that, and then you're bumping it up. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I wanted to get back to Hawaii. I wanted to get back to Hawaii, and I wanted to do a triathlon. And practically, with the Legacy program, it's one and done. They don't allow you to come back unless you qualify. That wasn't in my cards. So I looked and I said, I would really like to do a race in Hawaii, so I'm thinking about it. I found one that looks really interesting, but it just haven't pulled the trigger. So we move ahead, fast forward. My 25th, I just finished my 25th iron distance triathlon in Boulder.
In Boulder, Colorado.
Boulder, Colorado.
Wow.
And
There's some hills there, right?
They had a lot of hills. It's a very challenging course, and it's altitude, and it just happened to be a hot and windy day, so it was especially challenging. And I'm in the airport having a burger and sandwich at the bar waiting for my flight, and I bump into a gentleman, and he asks me, he says, because I'm, how do you know someone's a triathlete? They tell you frequently and often.
Or do you have the tattoo?
No, I do not have the tattoo. I do not have the tattoo. I'm waiting for someone to see. If I find someone with a marathon tattoo, then I'll consider it, because I've always thought it's the new marathon, right? But I don't have the tattoo. They're fun to look at, and I've got some favorites. So the gentleman, he said to me, he says, how many iron distance triathlons have you finished? At the time, my number was 25, so it's 25. Expecting a compliment didn't come. So he asked me a follow-on question. He says, how many iron distance triathlons have you started? And I said, touche, my serendipitous dinner companion. That is a brilliant question, I'm thinking to myself, and now it's going to be an even bigger compliment. And he looks at me, and I give him the answer. I said, 25. He said, so you finished 25 of 25? And I say, yes, waiting for the compliment.
Right.
And he says to me, you're not sufficiently challenged.
Ah.
You're not sufficiently challenged. And so here's the sport that I've undertaken. I've put a lot of time and energy into it, and he's telling me I'm not sufficiently challenged, and I believe him to be right. And he says, because I haven't failed,
Oh.
I'm not sufficiently challenged.
Whoa.
And so the timing is right, because now I decide it is time to step up, and I have to have the opportunity to really push myself, and I may not make it. In fact, it's highly likely I will not.
Whoa.
But there's a race on the big island of Hawaii that circumnavigates the entire island, swim, bike, and run around the entire island. And it's called the Ultraman. And in order to get there, you have to qualify for it at another Ultraman event, of which there's one in Florida. So in 2019, I signed up for Ultraman Florida, finished that race, and found myself with a great team, great crew of people racing Ultraman Hawaii, circumnavigating the Big Island, starting with a swim of 6.2 miles, continuing with that on that same day, a bike ride of 90 miles, having to finish that in under 12 hours, of which day one I barely did, because we had to ride our bike up the side of a volcano on the roadway. And it was incredibly arduous. Very lucky to finish day one. Day two, we rode our bikes about 172.4 miles up and over, following the circuitous routes of Hawaii.
Wait a second, how many miles?
It's about 172.4 miles, give or take.
On the bike?
On the bicycle on day two.
Whoa.
All of that had to be done in 12 hours. And just the beautiful scenery, the wind that would blow at one point at the top of that toward the end. I'm looking down and I can see all the way down to the ocean, thousands of feet below me, and the wind at my back is over 50 miles per hour.
Oh my heavens.
And I'm braking as hard and diligently as I can, because I want to be able to slow my bike down to about 50 miles an hour so I can take the next turn. And it was, it was just, I mean, Hawaii was doing what it does. It's just existing in all of its glory.
And is this what the...
That is not.
It is not.
That
There's
is
another
not.
one. Okay.
That is another one. But finished, got it done. The next day was a double marathon. And so in the Ironman World Championship, you ride your bike to Hawaii and back. At the Ultraman World Championship, you run from Hawaii to Kona. So 52.4 miles, and that's how I finished that day, next to a good friend of mine, Olaf Wasterneck, who's a 100-mile specialist.
Wow, what a journey. Wow, well, I want to hear about the journey that, was it the last one you were again in Hawaii and you're swimming? You're
Yes,
purely
yes,
swimming. You're
yes,
not
yes.
biking and I don't know what you even call that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I wanna know
decided to
about
do
that.
a marathon in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And that obviously is a very, very long swim. I got it. This was my COVID talent, right? Everybody does something they're going to focus on. What are you doing with your extra time in COVID? Well, our pools were all closed. And a friend of mine, Marshall Albritton, and I, we decided, look, pool's closed. We still want to swim. We're going to go down. We're going to go swim in the lake,
right.
Percy Priest Lake.
Yes.
And we've got BMX Bay. We're going to use that. And we're just going to swim. And no lane lines, wide open. We can swim as far as we want. And we learned quite readily, we can swim very far. 5 miles, 8 miles, 10 miles, 12 miles. These are things that we could swim. And from there, I developed a real passion for open water swimming. And I said, I want to do a marathon swim. And marathon swimming, a marathon swim is anything over 21 miles. That's the length of the English Channel is 21 miles.
Wow.
And so I got a lot of exposure to that. I swam off the island of St. Lucia. Beautiful, beautiful island and a wonderful place to swim. I did that in 2021, 2022, and 2023. Each one of those was a marathon swim. And that led me, all of that exposure led me to the opportunity to be able to do the swim in Hawaii, a very special swim that's part of the Ocean 7, and it's the longest swim of the Ocean 7 series. And that's a swim that a lot of people know as the Molokai Channel, but the Hawaiians call that channel Kaiwi, which translates to Channel of Bones.
Wow, Channel of Bones. And we only have about 4 minutes left. I want some more detail on this amazing swim that you did. You had a team with you also?
I did. I had a team of people, and so I had a boat captain, first mate of the boat, 3 kayakers, and a feeder. And so
a feeder, somebody to
give
you
me food and water every 30 minutes. And Terry Dietz, and she gave swimmer's advocate, moral support, how you doing? Just so wonderful to making sure that all my needs are met as I'm literally swimming from island to island, the island of Molokai to the island of Oahu.
Wow, wow. And a lot of it was at night?
A lot of it was at night. So we started on June 20th, and we started at 5:29 p.m. So right away, the sun was setting 2 hours into the swim.
You're starting at
night. Starting at dusk before the sun sets. And so the vast majority of the swim happens at night. And we keep swimming and swimming, and the sun came up deep into the swim. Beautiful, beautiful sunrise over the water, just incredibly picturesque and made for a wonderful backdrop. You come to life when you see that sun after having swam all night long.
And what about the sharks and marine life?
They're there.
Run into
They're
any?
there, yeah, and it's part of the swim. So, you know,
Did you feel them?
I felt the marine life. So as I was about to finish the swim, I was 1 mile away from the shore, and I said to myself, you know, I haven't fully experienced everything that the Kaiwi Channel has to offer, because I expected to be stung by the Portuguese man-of-war anytime between 2 to 5 times. I haven't had that experience. I'm only 1 mile to go. Statistically, I seem unlikely to have this experience. Madame Pele is a good listener. And so when I was a half mile in, there it was on my hand, my arm, my back, my other arm, hand, and face, and I felt it. And just to leave no shadow of a doubt, the blue bottle was on my back. So I'm completely wrapped in it, and I said to myself, if I need to, I'm close enough, I can just wear this as a Hawaiian lei into the shoreline.
Oh,
and this will be
God.
my finish.
God.
So it was painful, but honestly, your first encounter with the Portuguese man-of-war is a little bit of a mulligan. Your immune system hasn't really gotten attuned to the biotoxin. The next time, it's incredibly painful for about 90 minutes.
Wow, wow. And that seems to be the culmination of all your work, and how can you top that one?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so it was just a wonderful experience, and it was the trilogy of my Hawaii. I did the Ironman World Championship, the Ultraman World Championship, and the Kaiwi Channel Swim, and it culminated just this great a personal achievement that I proved to myself I can do these things that are incredibly hard. I don't necessarily have the physiology to do it, but I have the mindset to get me through it.
And in spite of you say you didn't have the physiology, but you did it.
But I did it. So to your point, it does prove that I did have it. I didn't recognize it, but I did have it.
And that is an inspiration to people that, God, look at this guy did it. And I have the different races that you've done, I have not even heard of them.
Sure,
and particularly the last one, who knew, 20-some miles swimming in Hawaii?
28 miles of open water swimming, yes,
miles.
in very tumultuous waters and big waves, lava rocks. Aggressive marine life.
The lava rocks, you had to make sure that you didn't pin yourself on the rocks.
So the finish is really challenging, and I didn't appreciate this, but the 5 heart rate zones, I kind of cruise in zone 2, but at the end, you really have to pick it up because you've got to thread a needle and make a lot of serpentine changes to be able to get safely to the shoreline. Captain Mike Smith, he's funny. He jumped off the boat, captain overboard, and he helped me navigate. He would swim ahead with me in fins and wave to where he wanted me to be. I would go to that spot and look up. He would be another spot. He would be waving, and that's how he safely guided me to the shore through the surf.
Amazing. Wow. Well, Ted, we have run out of time.
Wonderful to talk to you, Becky.
The next adventure I want to hear about.
Absolutely.
I'm sure anybody else would love to hear about. Thank you very much.
Oh, certainly.
Transitions, Body, Mind, Spirit.